Well, hey, good morning. While I'm waiting for the garage to warm up, as most of you know, we're moving, so any extra time, always packing and getting stuff ready to take to the new place. So I ran across, figured at some time I'm going to have to start looking at my tools and my books. So that kind of brought, I guess, a subject up for a video on when I purchase VW parts, how I look at the parts. Everybody says, everybody looks at things with different eyes. Even when you're struggling with a problem, you let a new set of eyes look at it and see what they can bring to the table. Well, when my eyes look at parts that I purchased for the Volkswagen, I kind of study them in terms of how they were made, if I had to make this part. And here's a little why. Because of my, work history or background. As you all know, I retired this year, but I had a wide range of jobs involving manufacturing, machine design, tooling. So when I look at a part, right? So my bus, being a northern bus, the back plates were so rusted, so thin, you just touch it and it just blew away. So here's a back plate from our friends, Wolfberg West. So when I look at the part, I don't like, ooh, that's so pretty. Look at that nice paint, or guess what? This part's $85. So it's like, man, I can't believe I paid $85 for this. But when I get a part for my bus, I enjoy working on it. I look at the part, being in manufacturing, and think, well, how did the guy make this? Right? So first you had to have a tool designer who had to draw this up and make prints and design it. Then he had to determine what size die shoe, if he's going to hard tool it, meaning put it in a die and put it in a press. So you buy die shoe sets, upper and lower. So then he had to design all the components that go in the upper lower die shoe. The punches, the buttons were right here, correct? You got holes, you got to punch a hole in them. So then he takes his material list, the size die shoe, here's the steel, and here's the date and punches and buttons I need you to order, and off it goes to the buyer who buys the steel for tool and die. Well, part of your $85 not only goes to the guy that designed it, but the guy has to order the steel. So now the steel comes in. Guess what? Well, you always have an apprentice, so an apprentice gets a cut sheet. What? A cut sheet. Gets the tool steel, preps it. If you notice on here, you got a block that's welded on, and the block is for your adjuster. So maybe the apprentice, and part of his apprenticeship, is making that block. So he cuts that rectangular steel. Well, if you look, it's more than rectangular. You see there. So he cuts this steel out. You can see machining marks in here. So he machined this. Might have used a wire machine. Could have did old school, just a mill. Next, let's say you get this thing done, and now if you want to go and run your first piece. Well, you go and run it, it isn't going to come out perfect. Also, what size press are you going to use? Is it going to be a 400-ton Niagara press, or 150-ton Komatsu? So the guy who designed it in the die shoe has to know what size press, how much tonnage, how about size, what's the bed size of the press, how he's going to clamp the die shoes to it, how he's going to feed it. Is it going to be one hit or is it going to be a transfer? Is he going to have a 2-hit die? He's going to put, and then also even back up more, so he's going to buy square sheets. So you got a square sheet, lays it in the die, hits the button, stamps, goes in, grabs it, moves it to the next die, hits, stamps. So is it a 2-hit die? Because you see there's a lot of forms. You know, so can he form all of this with deep draw material? Now we got material. Well, you have a buyer, right? Buyer in manufacturing, what's the buyer do? He buys stuff. So he gets the spec. This is the steel I need you to buy. I need you to buy squares and so many tons of it. And this is the tensile, yield, elongation. This is the draw. This is what I need. Now when it gets to press, guess what? When it goes into press, you need to lubricate it. You need draw lube. So now when you go to draw lube, guess what? Safety gets involved. EPA, environmental people in the factory get involved. So they look at it, okay, is this stuff nasty? How do we dispose of it? Is it considered a hazardous waste? And the whole reason I'm going through all this is everybody is getting part of your $85. Everyone. Yeah. And then, ultimately, you got some guy doing forecasting. He's trying to figure out how many old men in Iowa are going to buy a backplate for a 67 Deluxe bus. How many should he build? How many per year should he make? How many does he have on the shelf? Oh, you got inventory. Yeah. Oh, you got production people, production controllers. They got to go around and do inventory count. So they do an inventory count. Hey, you got this many on hand. Well, he isn't going to do that for free. He's going to get part of your $85. Then, if it's not high volume, then can he soft tool it? Well, what do I mean by soft tool? Can he use a turret punch? A CNC turret punch? Can he, instead of a 400-ton press and a 1-hit die, turret punch, they can program it, go in, do various hits, gradually hit the different components. You know, they got an Amata, a Salvaghini that could do some of these draws. How do they roll this edge, though? Look at that. That's going to take some oomph. Then it's got to go to the welding department, right? So the welder, he's got to spot weld this piece right here in the back for your emergency brake cable. Spot welder's got to weld and spot weld this block on here. So now you got a fabrication department that produces the part, and it has groups and groups. So one fab group either NC punches or stamps it. The next group takes it, the components, and welds it. And all along the line you need to have some quality inspection. You got to do like first piece approval. You're going to put this in a die, run one and say, yeah, kind of looks good. And then 200 pieces later, someone comes along and says, well, let's see, does this still fit in this block? Are these holes still in line? Has this shifted? Has this pattern that bolts to your axle, has it shifted left, right, up, or down? So in saying that, okay, on this part, what would you think is critical? So on this part, you have critical attributes and significant attributes. So a critical attribute would be the center line of this hole, correct? And these. A significant attribute would be the mounting of this block. So now you got to put together a quality plan. And then you got to do a quality inspection. And top-rated shops do statistics, SPC. Guess what? All of these people get part of that $85. So when I look at a part, I don't get upset about the cost, because I know what it costs to produce parts. I think of all the people that's touched this, it had to be painted. So was it e-coat? Did it go through a phosphate tank and was it clean and then painted? Was it powder coated? And through all that, paint systems, guess what? They're not environmentally friendly. So you got hazardous waste, you have emissions, you got clean air emissions coming. So EPA gets involved, and again, part of your 85 bucks. I mean, it's just amazing. So when you buy a part, what do you look at? Oh, it's Eastwood. See, it's got a pretty little sticker. Let's take it, bolt it on, done, and move to the next. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? You don't have my background. You didn't grow up in it. You didn't see it. You weren't part of it. So when you look at the part, when I look at it, I think of all those people. All those inspections, all those tests, the buyers, the production guy, the tool maker. That die needs maintained. You got to have a tool maker that does the die, and guess what? Then they have to have a die maintenance program. They have to have a stroke counter. That die, they have to figure out how many strokes on that die can this die making this part before it has to be PM'd and sharpened. So then you got a PM program. Plus 400-ton press, you don't buy one for each part. So you got this rack of dies. And then these dies have to be labeled, they have to be stored. You got die movers, you got die setters. I mean, it's not, it's an involved process. That $85 touches so many hands, not only just the company, the equipment, the overhead. So, I'll quit here. So, when I buy parts, that's what I look at before I bolt them on. And maybe that's why it takes me so long to get my bus done. Because I'm thinking about how they made this part and all the people and the equipment and the dies. And then all the quality checks. What are the dimensions that are critical, significant? And what's their quality checks? Well, now that I have thoroughly either confused you or said, Dan, what does this have to do with you fixing the brakes on your bus? But it's just the way Dan looks at parts. And mainly because of my background. Yes, even when I was in high school, we had machine shop. I ran a lathe. We had welding. We had a foundry. We had drawings. We had, basically, when I went to the high school, it was like a trade school. So how many of you in high school ran a metal lathe or had a foundry or had a weld shop and did welding? How many of you drew? And not CAD, I mean drawing on a board, three-dimensional. I mean, how many of you done ISO views? How many of you do front, back, side view, know what the hidden lines are? Can read a print, can make a print. I started that process when I was in high school because back in the late 60s, that's what we did. I mean, we didn't have phones. We didn't have AutoCAD. We had trades. And trades back then were a big thing. So imagine the difficulty manufacturers are having now. To get a tool and die maker? To maintain a die on a part? Lennox has their own tool and die trade and their own apprenticeship, both electrical, mechanics, millwrights, tool room. We have to train these young employees because they're not getting it in high school, but that's a different subject. I'm going to quit here. I'll show you how I progress working on the bus and getting this bolted on. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.